Surprised by what happened. I think in the wildest of our various kinds of planning, we never thought we would enter a situation where an entire quarter gets locked down. As I said, we have worked with our hands, legs, and eyes up, and therefore you couldn't see what you're doing. Only your fingers could work, your mouth could work, and therefore we did that. And what I say has got a meaning. As you know, L&T has got three parts to it predominantly. The EPC and projects are the biggest part of the company. There is the manufacturing, which is a decent part, and the services, which are a fast-growing part. We are not a pandemic-proof company, as we realized. But what has happened is the services sector, which is predominantly the IT services and technology services, have done reasonably well during this period. They could adapt to work from home, and many of the clients agreed for them to work from home. To a large extent, they have done pretty well from all aspects. Of course, some parts of the IT services company, especially which are dependent on travel and hospitality, to a certain extent, oil and gas and automobiles, had some setbacks. But overall, they have done decently well. If you take the EPC projects and manufacturing, which all depend on staff and labor being available at the place of work and where physical work is involved and voluminous physical work is involved, we could not do much because most of us were at home. The laborers were at our camps till around May end, and then once the 2 months countrywide lockdown was over, many of them wanted to migrate back to their towns and villages, which is obviously would happen because there were calls from home asking for welfare and so on and so forth. And today, naturally, there is a reverse migration that would happen, that is walking back to work. But that would take some time because once having gone home and the psychological fear of getting back to big cities and such, we need to overcome. Having said that, these 3 months, all of us being at home and trying to adapt to work from home, many of us got into this new technology platforms by which we could do virtual work. So you'd be surprised to see, on the EPC projects and the manufacturing side, much of the work that you see, and nearly 21,300 crores of billing has been done, or sales volume has been created, and much of it on the EPC side also, more than 60% of it on the EPC projects and the manufacturing side also, is predominantly because much of the engineering work, much of the procurement work, quite a bit of planning, even virtual inspection of materials using viral lenses and much of the technology platforms were accomplished by us. So we established new norms on how we can go about work even in virtuality. What really could not take place was real physical work at site because that required men and labor at site, and that could not be done under any circumstances because of the lockdown. So I think we learned to move ourselves from being getting into a pandemic shock to seeing how to manage this shock as we go forward. I think the organization has shown extreme resilience. All my colleagues and staff have worked under excruciating circumstances to overcome this. Much of our labor, so many of them who have been with us for a long time, stood by us. And at the moment today, with various norms, like you sit one behind the other in the buses, you have social distancing at site, you wear masks and various other paraphernalia to protect yourself. In lunchtime, you sit one not next to each other, but one after another to provide space and such. We are coping with it. Productivity levels are slightly getting back. And I hope that another 45, 60 days, we come back to what we think is normal.
Now, Q1 historically is a quarter for L&T. It accounts for less than 20% of the business. So can I say that now for L&T to come back and catch up in the next 3 quarters, there is a large opportunity. Some businesses lost which cannot come back, but the fact that what you've lost is a low quarter for you also creates an opportunity.
Right. Normally Q3 and Q4 are our best quarters for obvious reasons, because Q1, Q2 you go through, the March is just over, and therefore much of the billing etc. would have been done. And as you normally see, most of our orders are booked during Q3, Q4, because that's when most of the budgets get fulfilled, and we tend to book orders during that time. So Q1 is a relatively peaceful quarter. I would say we have missed billing about 12,000 crores this particular quarter, assuming we would have grown by 10%. That was our budget internally. We need to make up the 12,000 crores. How much of it we'll be able to make up in Q2, Q3, Q4 is a guess at this moment. But I think we are alerted, the entire organization, to gear up to see what best we can do in the balance Q2, Q3 and Q4 to not only to achieve the targets for those quarters, but also to make up some of the billing that we had lost in this first quarter. I am reasonably confident as I go across the organization, speak to many of my colleagues and others concerned, including the many clients who are wanting to support us, to push us. I think it's possible. The biggest positive factor in our favor is this backlog, nearly 3,05,000 crores as of date. As you would have realized, Adesh, even during the first quarter, in spite of much of the country not working, we managed to book nearly 23,574 crores worth of orders, and quite a bit, nearly 16,000 crores of it is in the EPC space. So that's considerable, looking into the situation that much of the country, including Middle East, was under lockout. So this gives us a good feeling that we are able to get things done. We are able to move forward. And assuming normality returns and there's no more shocks to be had as we go forward, it is possible that we make up a substantial part of this.
The hydrocarbon business, which is where everybody was worried about, the decline is there, but the decline is, if I'm an optimistic, I would say only 20%. So can I safely say worst is behind the hydrocarbon vertical, and now things will not improve dramatically, but things will stabilize?
Hydrocarbon business has got nearly 48,000 crores of backlog. So we have sufficient works on hand. In fact, we were being very selective on what orders to take, what not to take before the pandemic, because it's a highly process-oriented business. It is a huge voluminous business, and it is a business where we work under very strict protocol of safety and various other parameters of work. And all the 3 yards were nearly fully occupied before the pandemic, and so do they continue to be as of date. So once normality returns in many parts of the country is returning, the clients are also mounting pressure on us to get back to pushing the work, so that they need to complete some of the projects which are now delayed by 2 to 3 months to whatever extent we can to make up and complete it. In Middle East also, we are finding pressures to get on with the jobs. There have been some requests by the client to postpone some Capex and some progressive work, but that's normal under the situation, because clients also face Capex and such situations like we face and like many others face. So that's expected. But there's been no cancellation of orders. There's been no push to defer things indefinitely, so on and so forth. That's a very positive aspect of this entire situation. Hydrocarbon will get back to what it needs to be. On the Capex side of hydrocarbon, what we need to look at is the oil prices went down drastically during the pandemic. The consumption also went down because vehicles are not moving and flights are not flying, etc., etc. I think we see some symbols and signs of it coming back. And today the oil price was nearly 43, 44 yesterday. You see it climbing back. You see a certain amount of OPEC and OPEC plus kind of groupings getting together to get back some stability into the prices. And if that happens as we go forward, and I believe it will, much of the studies of Randstad and Goldman Sachs, etc., indicate that by Q1 of next year, that is January to March of next year, or our Q4, the price could stabilize between $50, $55, which gives good feeling in the sense that they will continue to spend on various fields and gasification projects, so on and so forth. So during the year, the order inflow could be a bit of stickiness, but as we go forward in the year, I feel it will pick up.
But are you getting signs that Capex is picking up, or like 2019 when the corporate Capex or private sector Capex was on a back foot, it will remain low, and the dependence on state Capex or government Capex will still continue to remain high?
Our Capex looks at, it can put it into 4 buckets. Number 1 is central government, second is state government, third is public sector units, and fourth is the international orders that we get, which is predominantly either governmental or big governmental organizations like Aramco or SABIC, etc., ADNOC and such, or multilateral funding in Africa and other places. So these are the 4 buckets under which we operate. If you look at India, looking into the fiscal and such as the situation of India, I do feel that the Capex this year will be on the slightly lower side, and that's inevitable because much of the money that the government has gone into social spending, into direct benefit transfers, into stimulating the industries, into MREGA schemes, so on and so forth. State governments will also do that in a similar or in a differentiated manner. So having said that, if at all you can say that India Capex is roughly about 8 to 9 lakh crore per year, I guess it will come down to 4 to 5 lakh crore per year. The saving grace, the positive aspects of this is that as we review our businesses, we find that much of the projects which we had planned during January, February, which was our budget time, we continue to see green shoots on all these projects. What would happen is that the projects, instead of getting done in 1.5 years, 2 years, could go to 2.5 years, 3 years, because the budget would not be appropriated in such a manner, but it would be spread over a slightly longer time. Second is we continue to see plenty of opportunities from multilateral funded projects, the JICA, JBIC, World Bank, ADB. We do find quite a bit of these projects, and we'll continue to pursue them as we go forward. State governments may be relatively slower on capex spend this year because many of them have had very bad quarters. Much of their income has not been there, so they will take some time to stabilize and get back. In the Middle East, as I clearly told you, it depends on the oil prices. The oil prices comes back to 50, 55, we'll see big spend, otherwise we'll see very particular strategic projects going forward. In Africa, as we see, it's a huge continent. It has to be spoken about country by country or area by area. But having said that, the projects that we are looking out for, especially on the multilateral funded projects, African Development Bank, the European funded projects, we see prospects and we will take the same forward.
Now, Mr. Subrahmanyan, there are two factors which are at play. One, in every sector, whether it is banks or IT or manufacturing, the big companies are getting bigger because of the change of the economy. How will that benefit a company like L&T because of brand, because of ability to raise capital, because of your engineering skills? You are in a very sweet spot. Do you think that the market may not expand, but you actually will be a big beneficiary of market share gain?
So how do you want me to reply to it? I have to reply to it very carefully, right? So you said big companies are getting bigger, so hopefully L&T, being a reasonably big company, will tend to get bigger. And I do hope for that. The second, I guess, see, what is important is not going bigger or growing differentiated. The point is, how well have you managed the company? We have been very careful, and I think I should give a lot of credit to my boss and Chairman Mr. Naik, that we had the foresight to tell us that on certain aspects of investments and such. For example, we moved out of developmental projects nearly 4 or 5 years back, right? We were the largest investors in BOT projects, we were the largest concessionaire holders in the company. Some of these projects are still with us, but you know the stated policy of the company is to move out of such investments. So we took a decision about 4 or 5 years back to move the company away from a hardcore EPC infrastructure developmental projects oriented company to more a technology oriented company, and that shift has been clear. Today, if you see our IT services and technology services and such platforms that we have within the organization, which were hardly 10% of the total volume of $22 billion, is now nearly 20% of the total volume, as if it was a normal time. At this particular time, it could be slightly different because EPC projects are not being able to function for the last 3 months. Having said that, as we go into the future, the emphasis is not that we want to not to grow the EPC and manufacturing part, but the idea is the technology services and the IT services can tend to grow faster, and that is where the emphasis on, that is where the management thought process is on, that's where our strategic thoughts lie. That's some kind of an annuity business for us. So if we are able to get it down to between 25 and 30% of the volume of the company at some point of time, let's say in the next 5 years, we become that much more pandemic shock proof, and from an overall point of view, we get to be recognized as more as a technology-oriented company than as a EPC, hardcore infrastructure manufacturing company. So that is the thought process inside. We'll continue to do that. At the same time, we being what we are in APC and manufacturing, the idea is to get stronger and more balanced in the kind of offerings that we do. So we're getting into more complicated projects, more bigger projects, more strategic kind of projects, and that is what would be our aim. We have moved out of some of the commoditized projects, like we are not bidding for all kinds of residential projects. We don't do vanilla railway construction projects. We don't do material handling projects. All these were dominant areas some time back. Today we are moved out of all that and we concentrate on areas where we believe we can offer value to our clients, better services to our clients, and more technology orientation towards from the client's point of view. So having said that, when you tend to look at yourself in a different manner, when you tend to conserve your money to what is to be done and focus and be more objective about it, I think that is where the strength of the balance sheet and the way the company goes forward lies. And because of that, if we tend to grow bigger, better, and more profitable, so be it. That's the way it ought to be. It benefits the shareholders, it benefits the economy too, and we are nation builders.
So I'm not going to draw you towards political water, but the fact that we know that a lot of Chinese firms and their contracts have got cancelled, is that a big business opportunity for a company like L&T?
Let's be very clear. The world has to be one of equal opportunity. If Chinese companies come here because of the pre-qualification, because of their fair amount of shareholding in Asian Development Bank, because of the way they're able to pre-qualify within our country and move forward, obviously we don't like it. Because then we also have to be given an equal opportunity to go to China and bid for projects there. Obviously now it is not on because it's an enemy country, having had the borders skirmishes and having killed nearly 20 of our soldiers. I think that's an emotional part of it. That's a very serious part of it in all of us. Having said that, if Chinese firms are not qualified and there's an opportunity available for Indian firms to do it either on their own or some other firms having even other collaborations do it, I think that's a very welcome step. And that's the right step, and that's the best method to go forward, and we welcome that, no doubt about it.
If I take the clock back and talk about L&T, let's say in 2000s, it was a pure EPC and a construction company. Then you incubated the finance business, then you incubated the IT business, then you went and acquired Mindtree. 5 years henceforth, how much of the complexion of L&T will actually be coming from new businesses and non-traditional businesses? The reason why I'm asking you this is because I looked at L&T Finance and the impact it had on your consolidated profits. So will the shape of L&T be radically different in the next 5 years?
I wouldn't say it would be radically different, but there is a change that is going on, a change that is visible and change that is strategically done and thought out and done. The change that is happening is, as you correctly said, in the later part of 90s, early part of 2000s, it was a pure EPC and project construction company. That has now come down to about 80%, and IT services and technology services are nearly 15%. Finance is maybe about 5 to 6% of the company. Now, as we move forward, I guess this IT services and technology services will become a bigger part of the total volume. And if it becomes 25-30%, is the direction that we want to take the company forward to. I think we provide very good services there. We have a very good name there. All the three companies are adapted very well to the digital AI, ML, and all the new and data analytics, so on and so forth. And they have very good people working there, and they're taking it forward in the right direction.